All right, we are live. Good morning. Thank you to those that are on already. I know a few of you probably will be rolling in here, but welcome again to another Teams Tuesday session here with eGroup. I'm Dan Drude, and I've got Dave Pipe on the co-host seat. We're going to mix things up a little bit. For those of you that were expecting to see Jesus today, I am sorry in advance, but we'll certainly get through some of the updates and talk about Teams and app integrations today. So I'll take us through the first few slides here, kind of kick off with the agenda and what we plan to cover. We did not get any questions submitted ahead of time, so definitely encouraging those of you that are in attendance today, if you think of something, feel free to throw it in the chat. If we can't answer that today, we will certainly circle back and reach back out with an answer. But we've got a few things that we're going to touch on. But again, if you're really thinking of anything around apps and integrations, fire away into the chat today, and we'd love to kind of dig into what's top of mind for you. So let's go ahead and get started here. I'll walk through kind of what we're doing today. Obviously, we're going to do some introductions, just kind of brief for those of you that may not know eGroup. We're going to talk about some actual updates that you can probably find in Teams. You may have seen them already with the help button on the bottom left corner, but we'll call those out specifically. And then, as I mentioned, Dave and I put together some questions that we've seen, not submitted today, but with groups that we've talked about, and we'll dig into the answers around that. But this time is also a great time if you do have questions to go ahead and submit those in the chat, and we will certainly keep an eye there. And then we'll kind of take this out and tell you how you can get more information. If there's anything that you need in addition to what we covered today, we'll be sure to leave you with this info at the end. The plan here is to maybe run about 30 minutes or so. We certainly won't hold you longer than that. But again, if you have any questions, certainly encourage those with the Q&A box. And if you happen to think of something after the fact, take a quick screenshot here, or just note that info@egroup-us.com is where you can send that as well. So again, thanks for coming, and let's dig into some quick intros here. So for those of you that haven't met me, I am the account exec here at eGroup that covers the DC, Virginia, and Maryland area. My qualifications are that I use Teams, and I've been doing so for a little over a year. But I'm also excited to introduce Dave Pipe, who recently joined the eGroup team. Dave, do you mind chiming in with a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, hey, I'm Dave Pipe. Like Dan said, I'm new to eGroup, but I am not new to the Microsoft suite. I've been in and out of different tenants for the last 3-4 years, rolling out different implementations, specifically doing some Skype for Business to Teams migrations as well. So
awesome. Thanks, Dave. Definitely excited to be doing this one with you here and continuing to work with you on all things Microsoft. So we'll dig into that in a bit. But if this is your first exposure to eGroup, just a quick background on who we are. eGroup's been around for about 20 years, and we are headquartered actually out of Charleston, South Carolina. We've got a pretty heavy presence across the East Coast, but we do actually serve customers across the United States, and also some of our larger customers and their international needs. We're a privately owned, debt-free organization, which really allows us to kind of drive our agenda in our technology stack. We really like to have that flexibility in determining what works best for our customers, and being able to make those decisions, I think really drives the success that we see with our customers. You'll note kind of on that bottom bullet there, if compliance is a requirement, if attention to detail is a requirement. I think if you're in IT, that's kind of a given, but we do really well in industries that need that speed and certainty with all of their initiatives, and this is why we've seen the success that we've seen over the past couple of years. So with that getting started, let's kick it off. We've got our buddy here who's going to tell us what is new in Teams. Dave, you want to take us through kind of some of the new releases here?
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Once again, good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. So let's just dive right in to what's new with Teams. You can set your out of office messages. There's an updated share sheet. And also, you can now schedule webinars right in Teams, and that excited our marketing team very much here at eGroup. So let's just dive in right here to setting out of office. So Microsoft's doing a great job of keeping me out of Outlook. The less time I spend in Outlook, the better for me. So you can set your out of office in one of two ways. You can click on your profile picture, which is right up in the top right. Click Set Status Message, and then click Schedule Out of Office, and it'll take you to the screen. Also, you could select your profile picture, go to Settings, General, Out of Office, and then hit Schedule, which is very similar to Outlook. So as you can see here, your options, Very similar to what you'll see in Outlook as well. You can schedule it. You can set it up to only send replies to in your organization or inside and outside of your organization. But yeah, so there's that. Next is the new share tray or share sheet, depending on what language you speak. So when you're in a meeting, you go to the upper right and you click the little share button, and you're now presented with a drop down, which in my opinion is organized way better. Right at the top there's an option, like a little radio button to include computer sound, which I'm sure a lot of teachers around the world are very happy to see.
Yep.
I spent a lot of time being a home proctor to my daughter in her virtual school this year. And when her teacher would play like a YouTube video, she would rely on her microphone to pick up the computer speakers. And of course, ran into a lot of issues, and this option being right there front and center obviously fixes that. Next, you have the option of sharing your entire screen right there. Oh, nope,
sorry.
All good. So you have the option of sharing your entire screen right there. And then to the right of that, you have the windows. So you can click that, and then it'll give you an option of all of your open windows. Whiteboard there is pretty self-explanatory. It'll give you a collaborative whiteboard for your meeting. And then when you skip down there to PowerPoint Live, that's a fun new feature, which will allow you to upload your slides directly to Teams. And then you're shown a custom presenter mode. This is going to really help out a lot of users like myself who only have one display but want to utilize things like meeting notes. So you'll have that whole, display there in front of you, but your attendees will only see the presentation. So let's skip ahead there, Dan. Now we can move over to the scheduling a webinar. Excitingly, is now in Teams. So while you're in Teams, on your calendar, you will now have this drop down option next to the new meeting there. So when you click on webinar there, go ahead, Dan. Thank you. Sorry, I also had to take a drink there. You will be presented with a screen that's very similar to a standard meeting setup. However, you will now see that you have a couple extra options, things like registration requirements. Your option here would be none for people in your organization or everyone, and everyone should be the default as well. Webinars will support up to 1,000 interactive attendees. And if you exceed those 1,000 seats, Teams will automatically scale you to a view-only mode that will support up to 10,000 viewers. You can add your title and add your presenters, but you're not going to add any attendees here because before you send it out, you can click this little view registration form, which is just above the title box there. And when you click on that, go ahead, Dan, in advance. You can see what the registrants are going to be presented with. This screen here will pop out into a second window. And then so guiding you through that, starting at the top, you can see Janine uploaded an image here for this webinar. And as we move down and on the left-hand side, she gave it a title and description and added who will be speaking and gave that person a little bio. You can add, a bio for everybody who is a speaker there. On the right-hand side here, you have the form that the attendees are going to have to fill out to register. Now, by default, this form will have first name, last name, and email. You can add additional fields like addresses, job titles, things like that, but you can also create custom questions. And all of these additional fields can be set as optional or required. And so there you have it. That is what is new in Teams.
Awesome. That's good stuff, Dave. I know from like what we're doing today, even sharing out screens is a lot easier. I know it's a bit kludgy in kind of the old way of doing it. And I think with the PowerPoint too, that if you share a certain way that attendees can also click through slides. And I know that Teams used to be able to do that, and I think sometimes it's gone away, but I know I've seen that a bit more prominently featured where you can actually kind of skip ahead.
Yep.
So for all of you out there that have to go sit on your next sales pitch, see if they can set it up with Teams and kind of cut to the chase. Get through the marketing decks, right? No, that's good stuff. And if you have any questions on kind of what's new with Teams, I think a lot of this stuff is really straightforward. But feel free to throw that in the chat, and we'll be happy to follow up or even talk on that today. So here's some kind of questions and answer time. And like I said, we didn't have any submitted ahead of today's event, so we went ahead and came up with some that we've encountered in engagements with our customers today. So our first one here, if we want to run with this, Dave, can I restrict app availability in Teams? And I'll go ahead and just kind of pop over to the slide that you had put together, but
For sure.
talk to us a little bit about this, Dave.
Yeah, this is a question that I was presented with a couple of my previous employers. In the Teams Admin Center, the short answer is yes. So in the Teams Admin Center, you can drill down and get into Manage Apps. And it's here that you can search a list of these apps, and you can edit the permissions on a per app basis. Now, as you can see, if you choose an application, you can then either allow or block your organization from using it. This will affect the permissions for all of your users. I personally don't like doing it this way. So let's go ahead and to the next slide there, Dan. My preferred method is via policies. You can control what apps are available to your team users by allowing or blocking apps that are published by Microsoft, third parties like your Evernotes, and even apps developed internally by your organization. To do this, simply just hit up your Teams Admin Center, and then from there you can use a global policy, which by default allows all, or you can create your own custom policy and assign it to users or groups as you see fit. Now, I personally don't like touching default policies, and I don't mind putting the extra work in to create the custom policies. So, I mean, creating your own can also allow for more restrictive policies for like your C-level positions, because we all know that they're probably the biggest offenders of doing things that they probably shouldn't be. And also while giving access to a completely different tool set for, say, your marketing team. So there you go. You can, that's some of the best ways to set app permissions within Teams there.
Awesome. Very cool. So let's hop into the next question here. So this one pops up a lot. Can external users access the App Store? And so at a high level, it depends, right? And I think that boils down to what we consider a user, right? And you may see this going into Teams meetings, right? You're working with a third-party group or maybe a potential client or something like that. And sometimes you'll see as they sign into your meeting, they'll have kind of the denotation that they're a guest. But other times, right, you've got organizations that you work with closely, and they're essentially kind of part of your organization, right? So the answer is no on the external user side, right? The federated users. And so this would be, you know, for me on the sales side, we have a lot of projects. We'll set up a Teams instance with one of our customers. I'll go through two-factor authentication to be able to switch into their instance. But as an external user, I would not be able to install, update, or delete apps in any sense of the word. And that's just simply how they have it set for external users. I apologize, the lawnmowers. That's perfect timing there. On the other side of that, there is the guest user, and so they cannot do this either in a shared context, but they do have access, or they don't have access to the App Store from the Teams desktop application, but they can do it via a direct link. So really the biggest thing when answering that question is to qualify whether we're talking about guest users or actual federated users and what you want them to actually be within the organization. And I think that really comes down to the policies that you set and how you envision that relationship with whoever that is that's going to be interacting with your Teams instance. But definitely something worth noting when it comes to actual apps involved in your day-to-day and the kind of access that you want different users to have there. Dave, any additional commentary or anything on that from your side?
No, I mean that's like a really good high-level overview of the differences between your guests and your external users there.
Awesome. So good stuff on that one. We have seen some questions come around Planner and kind of what is going on with that. So really just quickly wanted to touch on where you can find that within Teams. Most of you probably already have found this, and if not, maybe you've interacted with To Do. But you'll see here, and I use dark mode in mine because I'd like to pretend I'm on a nuclear submarine. But on the left-hand side, you'll see tasks by Planner, kind of on that vertical stack of applications over there. And we're seeing Task by Planner and To Do currently. But ultimately, I think as Microsoft, as they kind of consolidate and make things more uniform, right, this will probably condense into a single name, and maybe make it a little easier to track there. But this is a great way that if you're working with other organizations, if you're working internally, you can assign tasks, you can schedule tasks, you can manage different engagements that you might have ongoing, and be able to navigate that within Teams itself. So really wanted to call that one out, just in the event that we did see that a few times in terms of questions around where it is and where it's going. I think it's going to continue to become more and more integrated into Teams, and you'll have more and more of that cross-team compatibility as when it comes to how to plan things out and how to assign different goals and objectives for different projects. So if there are any questions on that, feel free to throw them in there, but I think that was a pretty straightforward one. So Dave, we're going to kick this one back to you and dig into Teams Wiki versus the OneNote in Teams.
Great, thanks. Yeah, so by default, every team is created with a Teams Wiki. Now, in this context, wikis can be considered a very light version of Microsoft OneNote, in so much as they both have a section and page type of structure, and they both live in SharePoint. Now, Teams Wiki does have its limitations. Now, Teams Wiki will only work inside Teams, which is not a terrible thing if you're looking for that single pane of glass, right? Because that's what Microsoft's trying to do, have Teams be that hub for everything that you're doing at work, right? However, the data in Teams Wiki is somehow not searchable. You cannot, like, if you have, a 5-page note of just, information on how, say, a specific application works, and you want to know about, the API stuff, you can't just search for API in there, and it won't bring any of that in your Teams search. So you can't search it. If you delete sections or pages, they're not recoverable. And so, not to mention, like, the feature set here isn't nearly as robust as say your OneNote, right? So let's go ahead and advance there, Dan. You can add OneNote in Teams, and if you look right at the top here, like where it says General, then you have your Post Files, you have your Wiki. You can, throw a notebook right there in your tab and get rid of the Wiki tab if you want. Not to mention, you can also pin it, to your Applications column on your left-hand side of Teams, which is not pictured here, but you have a lot more organization features in your OneNotes. And in Teams here, it's running the complete web version of OneNote, which also includes your drawing and dictation, and also keeps version history. The notebooks can be moved and migrated, and as you make edits, you can see who made those edits and who added content to your note. None of that is available in Teams Wiki. Obviously, you can well, not obviously, but there is also recovery in your OneNote. So if something accidentally gets deleted, like, and if a whole note or a book gets deleted, it can be recovered via SharePoint. And also with your version history, you can go back and, if someone accidentally deleted a whole block of text, you can go back and recover that. So what can you do? Like I mentioned, you can just kind of add a OneNote tab and get rid of your Wiki tab, and you're moving right along there. That's how I personally set up all of my teams. That's how I've set it up in the past. One of the other big features, like, if you want to be free of distractions, you just want to be in your notes, you can just open up OneNote and have all of your notes synced there as well. So that's my case for using OneNote over Teams Wiki. But I mean, they're both fine. I do like the fact well, I should say my biggest plus of OneNotes and Teams is not just how robust the tool is, but it's also searchable. I mentioned how big of a pet peeve that was on the Wiki side. You can't search the Wiki. You can search OneNote in Teams, and that's a big deal. And that's what I got there for OneNote and Teams.
Yeah, no, Dave, I think that's a great point. To kind of circle back to, like, as a user of Teams, right? We with various customers that we have, some of these projects can go 6 to 9 to 12 months. And I have to imagine that if we did this with Wiki, not being able to search would be a huge pain in the butt compared to, all right, well, we actually did something back in March. We need to pull that up, fire off a quick search, and you can hop right into it, right? And I think a lot of people have probably been using OneNote, prior to this integration with Teams. So it seems kind of like a natural transition to be able to have that available. I know that you can pull it up and add it to your apps on the left side,
Yep.
where your kind of default apps are chat, activity, Teams, and calls. You can add OneNote right there to make it easily accessible.
Yep, that's where mine lives.
Yep. Yeah, so I think in terms of just kind of helping teams work a little faster, a little more efficiently, being able to search, but also being able to have a commonly used tool right there within Teams will only enhance that experience. So
yeah, I'm a big proponent of a single pane of glass. So being able to pin things like OneNote and like tasks on the left side of my Teams there is just great, because that's two less applications or websites that I have to have open at a given time. So
yeah,
very useful.
Definitely agree. And I think, if you look at a year ago where Teams was, we were getting excited about nine video squares. And now it's like, all right, well, you can do 60 to 75% of your job out of Teams now. So it's certainly come quite a ways with, the obvious, but it's definitely becoming easier and easier to leverage.
Yeah, all we have to do is just get that calendar to be a little bit more robust and do away with email, and I'm happy as a client.
No more email. I dig it. Very cool. Well, so I think that really covers it. I'm not seeing anything in the chat box today, so hopefully we kind of were able to provide some good high-level information around some of the default integrations that you might be able to jump into immediately. From an e-group perspective, if there are kind of broader needs around, how do we secure and govern our Teams instance? How do we continue to dig into integration? How do we automate Teams? We have entire workshops dedicated to that. This is part of our Modern Workplace series that we run, but really as most of our workshops operate, we're going to come in, we want to get a sense of what you're doing day to day. A lot of groups are, hey, we've set up Teams, but we've only got the basics, and we want to understand what the basics mean to you. And where do you want to go? Did you come from Slack and you had 100 different integrations that you want to see how many can map over to Teams, or are you really just looking to make sure that you've got a secure way to communicate with outside parties? We'll really want to dig into that. We'll want to make sure that we catalog those existing applications and processes, and how many of those can we actually weave into your Team's experience, because that'll certainly make that transition easier. But also, we'll be able to identify, hey, maybe this is a bad habit. We've seen this time and time again, and help you kind of course correct on that. And then basically, we can set up kind of a plan for you to do that on your own. eGroup's certainly capable of coming in and running with that for you. We tend to like to work kind of side by side. But really, the goal would be to better integrate and automate what you're doing today with your applications and Teams for a more productive workforce. So if you have any questions, default email address is up there. That'll go out to the broader team here at eGroup. Happy to answer any questions as they pop up. Feel free to give us a ring here on kind of our standard 800 number. If you're already actively working with eGroup and your account executive, please reach out to them as well. They'll be happy to kind of dig into this. But Dave, if there's nothing else on your side, I think we covered everything today, and we can wrap it up here.
Yeah, happy Tuesday.
Yeah, happy Tuesday. Thanks to those of you that were able to check us out. If you haven't signed up for the next ones, keep an eye out. You can check out our website, and we also kick out emails with upcoming events. So hopefully see you at some more, and thanks again for your time.
Thanks, everyone.